Welcome back to the Done Deal Show. Arsenal have signed Jorginho. We're talking Enzo and maybe even Caicedo to Chelsea today. And of course, joined by the brilliant Ben Jacobs. Give us the lowdown on everything going on transfer deadline day. Smash the like buttons. Subscribe to the Football Terrace now. Make sure bell notifications are turned on because it feels like it's going to be a pretty busy and maybe an emphatic and enthralling day. But first of all, Dean, good morning to you. How are you, my friend?
Good morning. I'm good. Cleanly shaven for the final day of the transfer window.
No, looking very slick, my friend. Very, very slick indeed. Very, very slick indeed. And I know obviously it's a busy day for you. You may have to shoot off. The bat signal may go up as I know you're busy working today. But I thought we'd start with the big news this morning that came out of nowhere last night. Arsenal Football Club have signed Jorginho. Talk to me about how this deal came about, the price, and what this looks like for Arsenal.
It's a very good bit of business from Chelsea's point of view if you look at the fee, because as you may remember from previous shows, there were some early talks about Jorginho's future. And although his agent had said that he was committed to Chelsea, there was not only a low confidence, but a feeling in that order of priority that as the Kante talks have picked up, Jorginho maybe is the one that Chelsea were prepared to let go. And Arsenal have jumped because they've hit a dead end with Moises Caicedo after trying a couple of times. And Jorginho is the player that they feel is right for them because of two factors. One, that El Neni is injured. And I even think that Thomas Partey going off, even though that's not too serious, sent a bit of a warning message that they had to find a midfielder. They get experience. They get somebody that suits Mikel Arteta's style. They get a little bit of leadership in there as well. And they get a player, I think, that will be quite prepared to be a squad player and used as Arteta sees fit. And it's a great opportunity for Jorginho. The contract will be until 2024, assuming that he passes the medical. There's a 1-year extension on top. And for Chelsea, it's 12 million. Now, of course, if you look at it from Arsenal's perspective, some fans won't only look at Jorginho. They'll say, but is it not a backup and a failure, therefore, on Caicedo? But you can't necessarily fail if the club that you're talking to in Brighton are just saying, we're not going to give you a price and the player's not for sale. And in addition to that, if Jorginho provides the quality, very good, let's not forget, from set pieces as well, to help Arsenal win the Premier League, it will prove to be an inspired bit of business. So I think this is not necessarily a marquee signing from Arsenal fans' perspective, but what we can say is that if Arsenal go on to win the Premier League, he might well be a really important piece in the puzzle. From Chelsea's point of view, there will be disappointment if they allow Jorginho to go, which they have in the sense there's a club-to-club agreement. So it's now just all on the medical. And then they don't bring in Enzo Fernandez or, of course, another midfielder late on, because it will suddenly look like they've let a midfielder go and they haven't been able to bring in one. So fans are putting 2 and 2 together on that one. But I'd be very cautious about overly making a connection between the Jorginho situation and Enzo Fernandez, simply because Chelsea were feeling like they might lose Jorginho anyway on a free transfer. And this is a good opportunity to bring in some much needed cash. And Chelsea want this clear out anyway in terms of some of their older names. They want to reduce their wage bill. Jorginho is one of the higher earners at the club. So I think this is just one of those perfect balanced transfers. And yet it's probably at the moment, at the time we're recording this, getting relatively hammered as far as both sets of supporters are concerned, because Arsenal obviously wanted Caicedo first. It's not to say that they hate Jorginho by any stretch of the imagination, but Caicedo was the one that I think the Arsenal fan base was starting to build towards. And from Chelsea's point of view, they're quite disappointed at the moment to see Jorginho leave. He's very popular amongst the Chelsea fans. He was the vice captain of the football club. He's been captain many times this season. So that's a factor in all of this. But you've got to look at it both ways. If you're disappointed as an Arsenal fan, but you see the disappointment amongst Chelsea fans at the moment, that tells you you've got a very good and useful player for your short term, which is what Arsenal need in midfield. They can reassess again in summer. They might be able to come back for Caicedo in summer when Brighton are prepared to sell him. From Chelsea's point of view, the disappointment is because Jorginho was popular, but also because they haven't yet announced Enzo Fernandez, and we'll talk about where that deal is at in just a moment. So I think this is a very good bit of business for Arsenal, but I can understand why fans may question it. Let's see, though, whether in hindsight, those that are questioning it now still question it if/when Arsenal go on to win the Premier League and Jorginho helps them do that.
Well, do you know, I think it comes down, some people won't like it. It's Chelsea and it's an old player. And I think they're a fan, from a fan point of view, which is what I do, signing old players gets a bad rap. In the
Mm.
summer, Man United bought one of the most decorated and most gifted DMs in the world, but because he was 30, his CV meant nothing, his ability meant nothing, and we look how good Caicedo has been. Now, I'm not saying Jorginho is on the same level, but I think Jorginho and the football terrace community will trust me on this when I say I've always rated him, and I think that in the right system for the right manager, there is a very good player in there. However, there's been a lot of Gooners who, I think, are more angry because they've spent the last 6 months laughing at Man United, saying, "Well, why would you ever buy, for any reason, a player who's in their late 20s, early 30s when you should be building for the future? We wouldn't do that. That isn't Mikel Arteta's plan. It isn't Arsenal's plan." And they now end up with a midfield where the main three midfielders are 29, 30, 31, respectively. And I think there's an element of, my tweets are going to be screenshot, my clips on YouTube are going to be put out there when I've said, and that's what comes down to a lot of fans. They throw a lot of shade at other clubs. They make up a slightly mythological view of what their club's plan is, and we're never going to deviate. When actually, the managers always like Jorginho. Do your research. The manager that these Arsenal fans that are angry. My message to you is this: the manager you back, the manager you say is brilliant, the team that you say is the best in the country, the club that has been running away in the last 2.5 years has led to you having your greatest ever start to a Premier League. You have the fourth best start to a league campaign in the history of football. It's them who want this guy. Yes, he isn't your number one target. He isn't, but Odegaard wasn't your number one target. You bid for Buendia before you bid for Odegaard, and look how that one turned out. Look how good Zinchenko is. But you wanted Lisandro Martinez before him. Not landing your number one target at Arsenal has hardly been a recipe for disaster in the last 2 to 3 years. So my message to Arsenal fans is slow the hell down, relax a little bit, and see how this one pans out. And it's a year and a half deal with I think it's as you said, with an option to extend by 1 year.
Mm.
So if it does go wrong, it's not like you're stuck with this guy till he's 35 years old on 250 grand a week, and you can't sell him and moving on. We know that they're going to be looking at Declan Rice in the summer, who is going to give that more youthful exuberance to this team. And who knows with Caicedo? This doesn't seem like a deal that's going to break the bank and actually stop them from going for Caicedo and or Declan Rice in the summer. So I don't necessarily think it is as bad as some people are reacting. Although I do get the concept of we wanted Mudryk, we wanted João Felix, we wanted Caicedo, and we haven't landed any of our number one targets.
Yeah, and I understand that, but also beyond those individual targets, what do Arsenal fans want? They want success. They want to win the Premier League. They want to have Champions League football season on season. They want to win the Champions League. Right now, the proof is in the pudding, and the project's going rather well, I would say. And if Arsenal can extend the contracts of key players like William Saliba and Bukayo Saka, and if/when they get Champions League football, which I think is virtually definite now, and should they win the Premier League, think of the summer window they can have when they've got more time and probably larger budgets to spend as well. And this, I think, is what we have to remember, that in January of the last window, Arsenal went in for Vlahovic and it didn't come off, but they put down a big offer. With Caicedo, they put down a large amount of money, and were they to have succeeded, club record ultimately. So that money doesn't just disappear. I'm not saying Mikel Arteta has to spend it, but 12 million on Jorginho is not the same as probably 75 million or more on Caicedo. So Arsenal fans criticising the project or the spending should be quite excited about summer, because there's going to be money to spend and the project will develop. And I think there's a paradox here between where Arsenal are at and individual signings that certain fans want. And I fully understand it, by the way, because we're only halfway through Arsenal's season. And if they don't win the Premier League, the first thing people are going to say is we would have won the Premier League with Caicedo. We would have won the Premier League with Mudryk. We would have won the Premier League with João Felix. But that's ifs and buts. And nobody knows how football is going to pan out, or any of these players are ultimately going to fare. So we're judging before we've seen, based on reputations, based on price tags, based on what they've done at previous clubs. And I think it is a little bit disappointing to me to see on deadline day, certainly on my Twitter anyway, EduOut is the top trending hashtag. And Arsenal have come under such heavy criticism at times for previous recruitments. But once again, we mustn't forget that throughout all of the heavy criticism, particularly last January, which I think was justified, and ultimately Arsenal did miss out on Champions League football. A year on now, look at how much continuity there is. Look at how much identity there is. Look at how many of the Arteta out critics are eating humble pie. And once again, if Arsenal don't win the Premier League, fans judging now will ultimately have a point, because one of these missed targets might be the difference. But how many of those same fans complaining now if Jorginho ends up being integral, if Jorginho steps up and scores big goals, if Jorginho ends up shoring up the centre of the park and providing engine room-like qualities, if Jorginho weighs in with set pieces? How many of the people now just saying it's Jorginho, why have we signed him? Why would Mikel Arteta, who's always liked him, have signed a player like that? Oh, and by the way, his legs have gone. Why say that now instead of just take a breath, realize your side is top of the table, and wait and see what happens?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I would slow down the frustration, slow down the anger, short-term deal, low cost, good quality player, and ignore the last year at Chelsea. And the reason I say ignore the last year at Chelsea, this guy signed at Chelsea to play for Sarri under the Roman era. And I'm not digging out Chelsea at all here, but look where they are now, where he clearly knows he's not part of their future plans. There's lots of players at Chelsea that I don't think want to be there. I believe it's impacted their performances. And that's what happens at a club in transition. And Arsenal fans should recognize that more than anybody. If you remember how some of the older players who Arteta inherited were compared to where everybody's behaving now at the club, these things happen. But it doesn't mean that those players that leave don't go on to do good things elsewhere. Just look at Willian. Willian is a prime example. Him and the Arsenal was a bad mix, a bad marriage. But look what he's doing at Fulham this year. You wouldn't think it was the same player. So I would just say slow down on that frustration right now. Viewers, when Ben leaves us today, I will be staying on, taking some calls from you on these deals as well. So stay with us now. More to talk about Arsenal a little bit later. But on Chelsea, I wanted to get your view. Enzo Fernandez, 115 million. I saw a comment from someone posted of you last night that planes have been sent to go and pick the man up. What's happening with Enzo to Chelsea?
This is the problem with Twitter. People hear one line and they take it out of context. What I said on a space yesterday is that Chelsea have sent a plane over there, which is due diligence. You have to, because if they're successful, they need to have it in place ready to bring the player back quickly because it's deadline day. And if they fail, then ultimately that plane will come back empty-handed. So I actually said on the space that we shouldn't read too much into flight tracking or planes, but Chelsea are there doing their due diligence. They've got their club secretary ready in terms of any paperwork that could be necessary. They've got a plane ready, which was due to take off this morning at 9:30 if a deal was agreed last night. But I also added that, much like in the early part of January, this doesn't yet have the Benfica green light. So Chelsea have been confident for the last 24 hours because they've put down an incredible offer. And that offer is pivoted to some extent from a release clause style number with a lump sum and payments to a little bit more than the release clause. But it all depends on Rui Costa. And the briefing out of Portugal this morning is that they believe there's still an impasse. But we have to be very, very careful at this point as journalists. You'll notice that when we have more time, I put out the context, I give you the lay of the land. And as of last night, I pointed out that Enzo Fernandez had re-stressed he wants the move, and that Chelsea felt they'd done everything possible. They'd thrown all they could, including basically re-reaching similar terms to what was verbally discussed when they first came to the table towards the back end of last year. But this Benfica board is divided, and this is ultimately contingent upon Rui Costa, who, as things stand, has not yet given Chelsea any green light. And there's various board members working on this. Bedag Agbali is leading. He's in London, though. So there is an element of not being able to push it at this stage face to face. But there's other Chelsea people and intermediaries on the ground as well. And everyone wants to jump to a conclusion on this one at this point. And I get it. But it's also deadline day. And we have to be very responsible as journalists to either report definitively or give you the blow by blow as we know it. And obviously, everyone has to appreciate, whether you're watching this live or whether you watch this in an hour's time, that it can change in a minute, it can change in an hour. You can get given something. My last check-in was at 9 o'clock, and I can get given something at 10:30 and then at 10:45 because it's very fluid. So Chelsea have simply thrown everything possible at this. That's where we stand. They do not, as we're talking live now, have a green light. Benfica are intentionally briefing negativity. And that's basically because you're in a negotiation. It's not just about a final answer here. It's also about, can you bluff somebody potentially? Because if Benfica want Chelsea to go back and trigger the release clause, they can delay and delay and delay and see whether they will. It's very difficult, though, because this type of clause doesn't allow them to offset the contract against the length in terms of fee divided by contract length. If they trigger the release clause, not only do they have tax complications, but they do have the financial fair play complications as well. So Chelsea have always said they won't go down that route, but it's on Rui Costa now, and everybody asks us what we think, what's the latest. But until Rui Costa intimates to Chelsea either a final answer or a new ultimation, we're still going to have to wait an hour or two to get to the bottom of this one. But Chelsea are there. They've been pushing for the last 24 hours. And I think, as I said at the top of the show, we've got to be very careful about connecting Jorginho to Enzo Fernandez. Yet Chelsea don't want to lose a midfielder and not game one. But by the same token, Chelsea could move away from Enzo Fernandez and try something audacious for Caicedo. They'll probably run into the same brick wall as Brighton, but they might come in at a higher number. They may have another target that they're thinking about, which is more Jorginho-like, that they can get at a budget and then build again in the summer. They may be exploring a last resort, like a pre-agreement, if they're trying to do everything possible. We're going to have to wait and see. But my understanding was that it wasn't really about a negotiation at the point they've reached this morning. It was very much about a presented offer and Rui Costa needing to come back definitively, which involves talking to his board. He missed a dinner last night in order to hold some of those conversations. So as soon as I hear more on that, I will let you know. But this is something that's probably going to move every 30 minutes or hour between now and, I would say, about 2 o'clock. And then if you get to 2 o'clock, there comes a point where Chelsea start to worry about timescales, worry about getting the player back, thinking maybe about even doing the medical in Portugal if something comes off late. The other complication in all of this is that Enzo Fernandez has a game tonight. I think that it is unlikely that he'll be involved. But obviously, if you're Benfica and you do just get all bullish and say it's 100% off unless you trigger the clause, then you can make a statement to Chelsea to go away by just saying the player's part of the squad. But my understanding as of late last night was that Enzo Fernandez will not be in the matchday squad, which is lucky, really, because those with eagle eyes will note that it kicks off at 9:15 UK. So if he starts that game, Chelsea will have to negotiate behind the player's back because it will finish at 11:15, 15 minutes after the deadline. But I'll be staggered if he's involved in that game. Certainly from last night, talking to sources close to Benfica, the intimation was because all parties are still moving towards trying to get something done, whether it happens or not, they will keep Fernandez away from the game this evening.
That makes a lot of sense. We have a comment here from C, a Chelsea fan, who says Rui Costa is the only one stonewalling the deal so he can sell Enzo to Madrid on the cheap in the summer. I don't know why that made me laugh so much when I read it. It's going to be an interesting one reading this today because it felt, just reading the stories last night and the headlines, it felt like it was moving to a position where it would complete. And there are reports from Portugal today, just to read this out, that's come out in the last 10 minutes, where it says Enzo Fernandez will be unavailable to play today, just as you've stated, for Benfica because of negotiations ongoing between the clubs. But there is still no agreement, and Enzo is getting closer to staying at Benfica. Again, what I would say about that report is this: the longer it goes on, theoretically, the closer he is to staying because there's a deadline at 11 o'clock. I don't think that intimates that the deal isn't going to happen. But of course, come 11 p.m. tonight, if it isn't done, it isn't done. It isn't done. There's nothing that can be completed. So I would say to Chelsea fans, don't panic either as of now. It felt a couple of weeks ago like it was going to go to the wire, you know?
I was just going to add that if you're Benfica and you're either happy to keep the player, if that's the eventuality, but selling on your terms is maybe the board's desire, then they can mess Chelsea around as late as they like because they're not bothered about Chelsea having a backup. They're not bothered about whether it gets done. If they're resigned to that at any point, or not really resigned, that's not a correct word. If they are intent on moving in that direction and not returning to release clause or nothing, because their stance and the fact that there's been talks suggests that there is this leeway, which again, as I said yesterday, is why Chelsea came in the last 24 hours and very confident. Then the later they leave it, the more Chelsea sweat, because they run out of time, they run out of options, they've lost a midfielder in Jorginho. So you can understand why Benfica, if they do want something ironed out, whether it's minor or major, if they do want to come back with any kind of counter in terms of the offer late, which could be some sort of twist, they can basically drag it out a little bit within the context of the day and then put themselves in a position where Chelsea are bullied into a corner. And ultimately, Shakhtar did something kind of similar with Arsenal in the end, where they made the Chelsea interest very public, very early. Chelsea came in very swiftly, and Arsenal didn't really have a play because they'd made it clear all along that they were not prepared to match the structure and specifically the add-ons of that Mikhailo Mudryk deal. So we have to be extremely careful on the final day of the window, because we're not in the room. And then when you talk to people in the room, what was said in that room can change in an hour, in 2 hours, in 3 hours, because it's gamesmanship. So, of course, Benfica are briefing that a player that is still legally their player with hours left of the window is closer to staying. And, of course, Chelsea are briefing that they're very confident of getting the deal done, and they've thrown absolutely everything at it. And that is true to the best of my knowledge. And now we're in a position where the offer's down there and the parties know that they have to come to a resolution within the next few hours. And the longer it drags on, the more leverage Benfica have and the less time Chelsea have to necessarily move on to other targets. And I've said this before about Chelsea. The one hurdle they have is you can mislead players and agents and clubs and it can come back to bite you. So Arsenal have backed away from Brighton because they believe Brighton's stance on Caicedo is genuine and they don't want to ruin that relationship. And sometimes when you line up a player, you line up an agent, you line up a club, and then you don't pull the trigger, it can be very damaging in the long term in terms of your reputation in the market, because you have to have a consistent narrative. So obviously Chelsea are not only working on Enzo Fernandez in the sense that they can't go elsewhere. Of course, the recruitment team and their intermediaries are split across multiple deals, and Bernardo isn't even in Portugal. So it's not like they're just waiting on Rui Costa and then going, yikes, who else should we sign? And the reason Arsenal have been able to move so quickly for Jorginho is, again, because whilst looking at Caicedo, they obviously started to line up that deal. So clubs are spinning multiple plates, but the damage comes when a player thinks they're getting a move because you've given them that narrative, but actually you're the backup, you're the alternative option, you're the one they're going to maybe come in for if Enzo doesn't come off. And then you're waiting and waiting and waiting because you've been given assurances and you can't tell the player they're the backup. So they're probably told that it's progressing. They're probably told that you're deciding on various things internally, that negotiations over fees are still taking place or something. And then suddenly it gets pulled, maybe because Enzo Fernandez happens. And that player thinks, wow, Chelsea really messed me about. And you've got to be really careful of that, because you might return for the player in the summer, or you might want to do business again with the club. And the club may say, well, we don't trust you anymore because you promised us this fee. It was late in the window. We made contingents to spend that money on a replacement, and then you pulled out at the last minute. So this is considerations as well. And as I always say, you have to keep your enemies, in inverted commas, or your rivals close. So therefore, that relationship is key. So Arsenal with Caicedo actually need some credit in many ways, because if they bait Brighton too much now, it might come back to bite them come summer if they return for the player.
Yeah, of course, it makes a lot of sense. You know, if they say, okay, look, we'll bid 90 and then they don't actually put it in, that's more of a frustration than anything else, because you're probably going to make them do a lot of work behind the scenes. In relation to Caicedo, because there was a report from Jacob Steinberg last night that Chelsea could bid for Caicedo even if they land Enzo. Do you feel with Brighton, this is a case of bid the right amount of money, or is it simply a case of even if Chelsea did something crazy today and bid £100 million, they would say no? What's your gut telling you based on the information you're receiving from all parties?
Well, I think with Caicedo, you're never going to rule a Chelsea trying out because they've already bid once. They like the player. Graham Potter knows the player. And on top of that, ultimately, if Chelsea need a midfielder in the final hours of the window, why wouldn't you just try? And because they've only bid once so far, there's maybe not the same level of communication between the clubs to really peeve off Brighton. But Brighton's stance as of this morning is clear that the player's not for sale and the only outgoings they're expecting are under 21s for the purpose of development out on loans. So therefore, if we take Brighton at face value, nobody's going to have any joy with Caicedo, but there's always a number because when you've got the player pushing for a move and you have a club like Brighton whose model is to cash in where possible, they would have to accept something if it was astronomical. But the question is, what is astronomical? And if it is 75 plus million, which is more than Arsenal's second bid, and it's not true, by the way, that they placed a third bid either, then Brighton may well now stick to their guns this late in the window, because at the beginning of the window, 75 million might have got it done. And then in the middle of the window, it becomes 80. And then towards the end of the window, who knows what it is? So I don't think we put a number on it because Brighton don't put a number on it directly to suitors anyway. What they do is allow clubs to blind bid. And if a magic number is hit, then they will engage. So to get Caicedo, you'd need a massive portion of whatever the package is up front and a total package now, I think, this late in the window of in excess of 80 million to even stand a prayer, but it might be much higher now. So it's ultimately clubs having to move in the dark. You're trying your luck with a low percentage of success, and you're having to basically get to a final offer because Brighton are not going to sit down with you this late in the window and go back and forth. So I think it's going to be difficult. I think that Chelsea, if they leave Enzo Fernandez empty-handed, could try for Caicedo. There were some sources last night that felt they might even go for both and give themselves an opportunity to get Jorginho, who's now gone, but also maybe Conor Gallagher out, and Hakim Ziyech in terms of wider players is also highly likely to go to PSG on a loan deal. That one's basically done, I was told, as of this morning. They're still just determining whether it's a straight loan, an option to buy, or even an obligation to buy. But Ziyech's preemptively done the medical or doing the medical as of this morning. So that one's basically done. So Chelsea could move for two, but they're running out of time. So you've just got to put down a lump sum and see what happens. But to reiterate, whether that lump sum is 70, 80, 90 or 100 million, Brighton's stance is not for sale. If the number becomes so astronomical that you just can't turn it down, I think they would get a conversation very late in the window with Brighton. But how high is a club prepared to go when Brighton are rejecting bids left, right and centre at this stage and being very bullish about the situation?
Yes, very, very true. Very, very true indeed. I just want some breaking news that's come out, Arsenal fans, from Graham Bailey, that Arsenal and Crystal Palace are close to finalising a loan move for Sambi Lokonga. So it looks, I mean, look, I mean, Arsenal fans don't want him to come on, but it looks like Jorginho in and Sambi Lokonga out. Viewers, just want your views on that in the comment section, because, of course, if El Neni's out for the rest of the season and there's no Lokonga, yes, you've improved your squad, but depth-wise, it's just gone down a notch or two if Sambi goes out. I just want your views on that one there, Arsenal fans. I really, really do. We have some super chats here. We're going to come to more later and take your calls a bit later on the show. So Gooners, stay with us. Chelsea fans, stay with us, because we want to hear from you on the show. This here says 12 million for a 30-year-old with 6 months left is poor, is what Snake Eyes says. Daniel here says, I agree with backing him during the games, but Edu has missed a trick here. Just pay over the odds, and the money is there. Edu has missed a trick here. Just pay over the odds. The money is there. Daniel, not a happy bunny with Edu today. Connor here says, what's your thoughts on J5 to Arsenal? We spoke about that at the beginning of the show, and when Ben's done with us this morning, we'll go back through that with you. So stay with us, my friend. This here says, this is a nightmare for all Gunners. If anything happens to Thomas Partey, come May, we are going to cry, is what Gunner here has got to say to us. And I understand the worry. I understand the fears, but we want to know what else you feel. Is Jorginho the last signing for Arsenal this window? Do you expect anything more from Arsenal after Jorginho? Could they themselves come in with a crazy bid for Caicedo or move for a Rafinha? I don't know. I'm just throwing names out here now. I mean, I did actually want to ask you about Youri Tielemans, because there's been a few loose links in the media connecting him to Man United. Could there be a Tielemans deal for somebody today, potentially?
Well, I think with Youri Tielemans, it's going to be about if one club moves, a few clubs might move and try their luck. But Leicester's anticipation has always been that he'll stay at the football club, and it's perhaps more valuable to Leicester to have Tielemans now and lose him on a free transfer, and then he contributes towards getting Leicester out of trouble. But Leicester are active towards the end of the window. They're still trying. It's a bit of a lost cause, or it has been in the past, for Jack Harrison. Leeds have always said that they don't want to sell. But if Leicester get in Jack Harrison and Tete's come in as well, then they might be prepared to let a midfielder go. And people are sort of assuming that Tete means that Maddison might be available to a late bid from Newcastle United. That's not my understanding. I think Maddison will still be a summer sale, as I've said, all window. But Tete going wide could allow Maddison to play in a more central role. And then Leicester might potentially look at a Tielemans offer at the right value. But when I say potentially, let me clarify, with low probability. It would have to be outstanding. It would have to be Tielemans driving the move, and it would have to be a club coming in at the 11th hour when they've known all window, to be perfectly honest with you, that Tielemans is available for a relative bargain fee. So the clubs looking at Tielemans prefer to try and get him on a free over the summer. And that certainly remains the case for Manchester United. Nothing's impossible in this window, especially if you lose a player and then need to find a player last minute. As we get into the afternoon, clubs suddenly move away from their original strategy and start looking elsewhere. So Tielemans is obviously an opportunity in the market, but at the moment, most of the suitors that have held talks with him before have decided to do that move in the summer because he is a free transfer ultimately then. And I think that that's important because Leicester are not the kind of club now, even with a bit of late movement, that want to take too many risks with their star names, Maddison and Tielemans, because ultimately they could be the bit of quality that keeps them up. And it will be so bad for Leicester in terms of their progression and their strategy, and for Brendan Rodgers if they do go down, and we have to term them in a relegation battle at the moment. It's not what we're used to from Leicester in previous seasons. So Youri Tielemans, who's captained the Leicester side for games this season, and a fit James Maddison are going to be really important to Leicester. And as things stand, unless an offer comes in late in the window for Tielemans, they want to keep hold of both of them. And even if an offer comes in for Tielemans, I think it would have to be an outstanding one, given the length of time left on his contract, to really make Leicester consider it at this stage. If you'd have asked me at the beginning of the window, it might have been different with more time, but now we're in the final hours. Clubs obviously don't want to suddenly be landed with having to find a replacement.
Absolutely. One deal that we know is pretty much going to happen today, Ziyech leaving Chelsea, joining Paris Saint-Germain. I also wanted to get your take on Conor Gallagher, because we know he's rejected a move to Everton, according to media reports. I saw a few other outlets today sort of mention Newcastle. Well, a Newcastle badge was next to his picture in terms of what might happen today. Ziyech is going to go. Could you see any more exits from Chelsea?
Well, Chelsea will need an incoming to let Conor Gallagher leave for sure after Jorginho. And the Everton links were never perhaps as solid as some were reporting, because Gallagher had made it very clear that he didn't want to leave for Everton. Newcastle, the ones to watch with Conor Gallagher, as I understand it, but very difficult. Ultimately, Chelsea would definitely need in Enzo Fernandez or another marquee midfielder to consider letting Jorginho and Conor Gallagher go. And Gallagher's still been starting games for Chelsea under Graham Potter. So I think that if an offer comes in that meets Chelsea's valuation, it is appealing in the sense that it gives them a profit on the books this year. And that maybe is what some fans don't realise, that when you sign all these big names under financial fair play, you're spreading the fee across the contract length. But if you sell a player, you can list the entire transfer fee from the sale over a singular year on the books. So then suddenly Mudryk is about 9 million, let's say, for this year, 2023. But if they were to hypothetically sell Gallagher for 40 million, that's 40 million. So if you just take those two deals, and I know there's more in the equation, but off those two deals, you're up on your books in terms of specifically transfer fees by 41 million. So this allows you a fair amount of leeway when you can get a big sale like that. But Conor Gallagher, I think, is going to be difficult for teams to pull off until Chelsea get somebody in. And with Enzo Fernandez, just coming back to that, the situation, as I was looking at a few messages that have come in, is essentially that Benfica won't use him in the game now. That's what I'm being told. That's been affirmed as 100%. We said earlier that there were indications of that I was told last night. I'm 100% told now that he's not involved in the game. And from Chelsea's point of view, once again, Bedag Agbali is the key figure in all of this because he's controlling the purse strings. And they've gone back and forth over different deals and different structures all around and even above the release clause, but with different lump sums and different payments. And Chelsea are not essentially playing easy ball here in any way, shape or form. They're trying to persuade Rui Costa, but also trying to be as disciplined as they possibly can without triggering the release clause and sticking to their structure. Whatever the final amount proves to be, they're sticking to their structure. They don't want to extend, for example, the lump sum within that structure to be too big, because again, it starts to create problems. And financial fair play isn't the only problem. There's business thoughts as well. A club can't just keep finding millions and millions and millions. And then if it's Caicedo or another midfielder, of course, Chelsea can try later in the window. But we have to be very careful once again, because the clubs that Chelsea are dealing with are very difficult at the moment and are, in Brighton's case, not wanting to negotiate. And in Benfica's case, they're making Chelsea sweat. So we see how it pans out this afternoon. There's a lot of games taking place for negotiation purposes. There's a lot of counter briefings taking place as well. We have this as journalists at times, and I think sometimes we get accused of sitting on the fence, but all you can do as a journalist is report balance. And if two people that were directly in the same room come out of that room and they're from different clubs and they tell you two different stories, then all you can do is relay both sides, knowing well and without naming your sources, unfortunately, that two people that were face to face in a room only half an hour or so ago have told you two slightly different things. So we have to be very careful about this. But Enzo Fernandez to Chelsea, I would say, remains complicated at the time that we are recording this, despite the fact that Chelsea are there and have been confident for the last 24 hours.
There we go. Ben, I appreciate all your updates. I know you've got to shoot because you've got a hard stop at 11. And I'm sure we'll catch up later on during today. Thank you very, very much. Viewers, we're staying on. We're taking your calls. We're going through your comments, your super chats, and your opinions as well. Ben, always a pleasure to speak, my friend. Thank you for the in-depth updates. It means a lot to us here.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Just on Ziyech, because I know you mentioned it. I forgot on that one. But before I whiz, because I've got 2 minutes, I think, still. The Ziyech situation is that PSG were very disappointed last night that L'Équipe, to their credit, were able to leak that story because the negotiations were advanced and quite sensitive. And I understand that Ziyech has preemptively done the medical. He's in Paris already. So there is a high likelihood of this one being done. But there were conflicting information from the Chelsea side and from the PSG side about the terms of the deal. It's definitely a loan. Chelsea actually came to the table asking for only a straight loan, which may mean that they feel that they can sell Ziyech in the summer for more money, or if he does well at PSG, they can leverage that. And PSG wanted a loan with an option to buy. And of course, in those two conversations, the compromise may be a loan with an obligation to buy, matching Chelsea's valuation. Chelsea would ideally love to be able to do two things. One, get Ziyech off their wage bill. And you may remember that I've said many times throughout the window, the problem with Ziyech is predominantly the wages for many suitors. And Roma and Newcastle looked, but they didn't want to pay those wages. So it's no surprise to me that PSG have come in because they're happy to pay a Champions League wage because they've ultimately got Champions League football. And from Roma and Newcastle's perspective, they don't at the moment. So that's one consideration here. But the actual format of the loan was, at least, around about an hour ago, still under discussion. So we wait and see now whether or not PSG get their way, in which case it will be a loan with an option to buy, or Chelsea get their way, in which case it won't. But that one, I think we can term as pretty much a done deal. It's just about the specifics of what happens after the loan that are still to be determined. But Ziyech thinks that move's done. He's in Paris. In his head, he's already joined PSG.
There we go. Listen, Ben, thank you for that update as well. Really appreciate it, mate. And I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Look forward to it. All the best. Have a good
Take
day,
care,
everyone.
bro. Thank you very much indeed. Viewers, stay with us. It's now your section of this show. Now we're going to go through your opinions, your thoughts, your feelings, your super chats. We have shared the link. If you want to call in and have your say, we'll share it again. We want to hear from you. I know a lot of Arsenal fans aren't happy. We're going to run a poll right now on here for you as well. What was the right way? Is Jorginho the right signing for Arsenal? I'm going to put that in there now. I'm going to put 3 options: yes, no, unsure is what I'm going to put in there as well. What options we have? Yes, we put yes 100%. Like you're backing this deal 100%. No, it's poor, and then unsure as of right now. That kind of rhymes. Good bars there. Good bars there. This here says, Terry, I really don't want another Chelsea guy. I get that. I get that now. Let's have a look at some of these comments that have come through here. This is from Hammy, who says, not going to lie, I think J5 coming in is to replace Thomas Partey in easy games. Decent business, especially when some just refuse to play ball. You can't force someone to sell. Now, I don't think J5 is as bad as some people are kind of making out. I don't think it's a colossally bad piece of business. Personally, I don't. I feel as though I understand the frustration that Arsenal fans have got. They thought Caicedo was coming in. They thought Mudryk was coming in. They thought João Felix was coming in. And there is still a world where all 3 of those players end up at Chelsea, and then you end up with a player that they don't want anymore. But I think in the short term, this is a good piece of business. I think for the next year and a half, this could be a player that helps get you over the line. And as you've said, in easier games, you can give Partey a rest when you're playing the relegation teams, the bottom 5, bottom 6 teams at home. Maybe a few away games, the Europa League especially, he's going to absolutely dominate in there. And let's not forget, this is a player that Mikel Arteta rates. This is a player that Mikel Arteta thinks is quality. This is a player you wanted a couple of years ago. There is a notion around Arsenal that Mikel Arteta only wants young players, that Arsenal's project is to only buy and build around young players. This is a fallacy. It's part of the project. It exists. But Arsenal fans, some Arsenal fans have got too caught up on this. But younger squad, young. Oh my God, the average age is going to fly up. And it is going to fly up now. But you need that core. You need that core. And remember this. This is what's going to happen at Arsenal. So hear this good. Your midfield 3 are going to be Jorginho, Partey, Xhaka. And in the summer, I think you're going to add someone like Declan Rice, 25 years of age. That is a fairly old and experienced midfield. But you're going to get 3 to 4 years out of that core group collectively. 3 to 4 years. By the time that 3 to 4 year ends, your Sakas and Martinellis and Nketiahs, Salibas, etc., are all going to be in their mid-20s. The Zinchenkos of this world, etc., are going to be in their late 20s. They will be your experienced players. What you'll start doing in 2 years' time then is backfilling younger talent into the midfield. So that when the Xhakas and the Parties go and the Jorginhos, you may have a 23, a 24, a 28-year-old in Declan Rice in midfield. They may be a little bit wet behind the ears, but the rest of the team is experienced to pull you through. That is how squads, there shouldn't ever be a rebuild. There should be a consistent rebuilding of the squad. It should be, it's an evolution. It never stops. It shouldn't, it's a circle. Pep Guardiola is brilliant at it. Fergie was brilliant at it. Fergie never really had to rebuild teams. They just always got rebuilt. There was one time we made a few mistakes between 99 and 2001. We didn't put enough into the squad. There wasn't enough replenishments. And then we hit that period where Arsenal and Chelsea kind of took over. We didn't win the league in 3 years. And then bang, we came back. And Fergie made mistakes in the lead up to that because he's not impervious to making mistakes. Arsenal did this where they went through years where they didn't refresh enough. Spurs do it. Liverpool have done it now. They haven't refreshed enough with the right people. They got it wrong. So I don't think Arsenal fans should be worrying in the short term about this deal. It's more about the long-term planning of the club that you need to look at. Morning, Terry. Hi. Can you ask Ben, is there any truth in Rafinha to United? We spoke about United, me and him privately. Nothing that he's aware of as of now. Sanderberg to Newcastle better than Terry. Terry thinks. I see a lot of people talk about Sanderberg. I don't know how good I really think he is, if I'm being honest with you. He's been rated as a top player for years, and I've never really seen him do it, but that's just my take. This year says, stop being spoiled, Arsenal fans. We are top of the Premier League. Trust Arteta. Trust Arteta. Terry, not all Arsenal fans are that. But it's not. This isn't about Arsenal fans being smart or not being smart. What this comes down to is there are certain Arsenal fans that come on the terrace who literally said buying a 30-year-old player is terrible planning. There's no future proofing it. If he's brilliant, you're gonna have to replace him in 2 or 3 years anyway. My club would never do it. They say these things, and then their club repeats the same thing, and they're left in the mud because they didn't actually think what Man United did was bad. They were just throwing shade. And I always talk about this on the terrace. And when it comes to football debates, I don't yield on my principles, my morality, my integrity to win a little battle. I stand firm because I believe I'll win the war. And what some fans of Arsenal have done, United fans do this, every fan base does this. This isn't exclusive to Arsenal. Is they show their ass to score little points in the banter wars with rivals, and then when their club does the same thing, they're left looking stupid. That's why I said there's so much banter out there now, it's become dead. Banter is dead with football because people overuse it. They milk it. They absolutely milk it. Daniel here says, when Partey inevitably misses matches, his lack of mobility, he'll cover only a fraction of the distance. He can't nick the ball off players and hold off opponents. Daniel, I agree with that. That isn't Jorginho's game. Jorginho will need legs around him. But what Jorginho will do from a deeper position, his passing range is excellent. The way he can break the lines, the way he can knit the defense to the attack, he will offer you some quality. Now, I think what you'll find this deal is about is you weren't able to bring in the exact player you wanted instead of Caicedo. I still think Caicedo, as long as Chelsea don't get him, is going to be a big target for you in the summer. You've also got a look at, from that point of view. You did this in the summer. You tried to get Rafinha, couldn't land him, and then you moved on to defense because the players you wanted to replace him was Mudryk, and he wasn't available in the summer. You didn't get Mudryk, and then eventually you got Trossard. But you signed a player that fits the profile. There's no point going from a Caicedo-like profile player and then buying a B-Tech version of him. You've gone for something different that's going to give your team a different dynamic. So I understand it isn't like for like, and there are similarities because of the athleticism and the speed and the power of Caicedo compared to Thomas Partey. J5 different. But another player that I think Arsenal should have signed years ago, I think United should have signed, is Ruben Neves. Not a physical specimen, but a very different type of player, but doesn't really get run over. Per Hansen here says Jorginho doesn't want him at the football club. Christopher here says, I think it's good. Jorginho seems to be a short-term solution. If Partey gets injured, I'd rather Jorginho there than Lokonga. We need to trust Edu. So some trust there for Edu coming in. Remember, we are live today, by the way, at 3 o'clock with Lee Gunner. So make sure you're tuning in for that one. Let's have a look at some more of these comments that have come through. What are my thoughts on J5 to Arsenal? Connor, yeah, I think I've pretty much answered that. I don't think it is terrible business. I don't think it is the end of the world for Arsenal. I think there are just some Arsenal fans with a little bit of egg on their face who are like, we would never do what United did with Caicedo. And now it's like, shit, we did it. We did it. H7 here, though, says Edu is a fraud. And do you mean he's a fraud because he's missed out on your main 3 targets? Is that what it is? Like, I'd love to get your take on that. This super chat here from Terra Official TV says, another midfielder immediately, another Chelsea reject in the ranks. When will this stop? Just pay the 80+ million. It's not Edu's personal money. The question is that money available? Is that money actually available? That is the big question here, which a lot of people don't like to answer. A lot of people don't think about answering. A lot of people kind of ignore, if that makes sense. Is it really available? That's the big question. Is it really available? When Partey sorry, we've already done. Sorry, blah blah blah. We've already did this one here. Thank you very much, Daniel Bloom. for that super chat as well. Breaking news: Arsenal signed Xavi Alonso. Sorry, that made me laugh. Why are Chelsea selling players? Obviously, we're talking Chelsea today as well. Why are Chelsea selling players? Because you've bought about 277 players. You have to let people go. This is where the balancing of the books will come in. You will start to sell players. Big wage. You got to think with Jorginho going, you're raising 12 million and you're saving £115,000 a week for the next 26 weeks. So you're making around 15 million here. And you need to start bringing in income now off these players to balance the books for the 600 odd million that you could end up spending by the end of today in total this season. So that's why you've got to sell players. Plus, I've said this before about Chelsea. You need to start getting rid of players that don't really want to be there. And I don't think Jorginho wants to be there. You've also got to get rid of people that the manager doesn't see having a future at the club. Has to happen. Simply has to happen. You can't keep people there that are not good enough. You really, really can't. Nino's here. But before we do this super chat here, make sure like buttons are being smashed, please. Nearly 4,000 of you tuning in. So get this stream past 1,000 likes while we're live, please. You may not be happy with your club's news today. It's not my fault. Hit the like button for the Terrace and me. That'd be very, very nice of you if you could do that. Thank you. Rubbish move. We aren't forcing teams to sell. We need to meet the asking price of players. Do you think Chelsea tries to skim? I think the answer to that is no. It's fairly rhetorical. That's why they are the most successful club in the last 20 years. I think it's one of those things for me. I'm a bit like you guys. I feel like I've questioned Arsenal fans a few times about their ownership. Are they prepared to go the extra mile, spend the giant money? Now, some Arsenal fans will say, well, if we win the league, then it's proof that we don't need to. I get that. But do you want to be... I'm not saying this is going to happen, but look at Liverpool. Liverpool spent big kind of for about 18 months, and then they yielded from doing that. They spent some money on Darwin Núñez this summer, but they haven't continued to spend big. And they've won one league in like 5 years. They've won a Champions League and some domestic trophies. It's a really good run. But Liverpool fans celebrated, oh, yeah, I know that Pep's won more, but Klopp did it spending less. Therefore, one league, one Champions League, one FA Cup, one League Cup is much better than everything that City have done. And I used to question it and go, I think you're capping. I think you're lying. I think you're bullshitting. I would rather, if I was a Liverpool fan, my net spend be £300 million worse. Not that net spend is real, but I'll use that basic barometer. I'd rather my net spend be awful, but have 2 more Premier Leagues, another Champions League, and a couple more domestic trophies. This celebrating failure because you didn't spend as much as a team that's successful, it's weird. It's kind of weird to me. I'd never really understand it personally. Thank you to Honesty for becoming an official member here of the Football Terrace. Thank you very, very much indeed. This here says, I'd rather take Jorginho now, spend well in the summer. Ultimately, the title charge and success in the future will prove if this was the right move. And I think that's a fair piece of an analysis there. That will prove whether it's the right move or not. If he balls out for Arsenal, all this moaning is going to look really interesting if this deal works out for Arsenal, of course. There's a member comment here that says, as a United fan, I am disappointed, not shocked, but not even that we'll go for a loan. Disgrace. Yeah, look, Jay, I'm a bit like you. I'm disappointed Man United are doing no business today. But I'm not going to lose any sleep over it because our owners are going. And we know why they're not spending money is because we're out of cash because of these failed projects. Everything I told you guys about Man United for the past 10 years has been proven right. The Glazers will go when they run out of money. The money has run out. They can sell it for £5 billion and they're happy. It's nothing to do with protests or hashtags or the new managers made them change their mind or Ralph Ragnick's changed their mind. The reason they are selling is because they're out of money. But that's also, in the short term, why we're not buying anybody. That's why we're not buying a single soul. It's annoying, but there we go. Daniel here says, although Jorginho has passing range, he can't compensate for the midfield destroyer role that Partey fills, as seen against City in the FA Cup. How do we come on to speak during your calls? Yeah, I mean, I share the link. I can share the link again now. in the comment section, my friend, if you want to give us a buzz and have your say. Very happy to hear from you. And I get your point that you're saying there. And he's not the same. I can't make an argument that he's the same. Who else would you have gone for? Is there an individual that you see as he could have done us a job? Because my view is I can't think of anybody of Caicedo's level that would be worth the outlay on deadline day. You're getting J5 relatively cheaply because of age and the club's willingness to sell him. Like if you suddenly went in for Hadara now, as an example, if you went to another club and you thought we need to find a midfield destroyer now, like Douglas Luiz has signed a new deal. If you tried to sign him, they're going to ask you for £60 million, and that's going to eat into too much money next year. Who else would you go for? And that isn't to try and catch anybody out. I'm just trying to think of players that are available for Kesse. Yeah, but Kesse is not for sale. Kesse isn't for sale. Barcelona have been very clear on this, that they're not willing to let him go. So they would stripe you up for money. And is he really a player that the club wants? I get he's a good player, but is he available? Sanderberg ain't good enough. Sanderberg isn't a good enough footballer. Jorginho is better. Amrabat would be better. Yeah, but Amrabat is committed to go in Barcelona. He doesn't want to come to the Premier League. He wants to go and play for Barcelona. So again, it isn't realistic. It isn't realistic at all. Who told you we don't have players to pay wages? Ronaldo was on 350, 500k a week. Glazers wanted him to stay till the end. After he left, they still paid. They still have to pay Ronaldo out the money we paid. Listen. I understand. I want them to spend more. They're not. Okay. When I say there's no money they're willing to spend. They don't want to damage the balance sheets anymore. They want to get the maximum price possible. They're looking at this as a business decision. That's all it comes down to, my friend. Like, listen to the financial experts and don't listen to certain journalists or certain content creators that pretend to be Glazer out because they're fucking idiots. Trust me, they're idiots. There is no money to spend at Man United now. Not because there isn't physical cash, but because they don't want to spend any more of it. There isn't available money. The money's dried up. And yeah, listen, the club was struggling. The club right now is actually living off that Ronaldo's wages. What they've actually using that pot of money that was put aside to pay for things, because they're not taking any more money out of cash reserves, just out of the working cash flow that was in. That's it. That is what it comes down to. Daniel's going to join us now to have his say about this move for Jorginho. You're not happy, Daniel? What do you want to say?
No, Terry, I'm not happy at all. I think, like I said in the super chats, that role is not being fulfilled. I think with regards to, Partey doesn't have a good injury record, and he's going to miss games between now and the end of the season. He's also got Europa League to deal with. And, given his passing range, it's just, it doesn't form a coherent unit based on how we've been playing this season. And I saw a stat that said, the games that Partey hasn't started, those are the games that we haven't won. So I think that's really concerning as an Arsenal fan,
Mate, most definitely it is, and I understand the concerns. I think Jorginho is a good player. I understand people want a like for like replacement for Partey. The problem that you have is that Caicedo is the guy you want. He's not available now. You're looking at Declan Rice. He's not available now. I just think Arsenal were doing this game where it's what can we bring in to complement, but not break our budget so that we can't sign the players we desire in the summer. Where this becomes a problem for me is again, if you don't win the league and Partey gets injured, people will be angry and say, well, you should have broke the bank. And that's true. And this is where it becomes a kind of the conundrum comes in. If Partey picks up an injury next month and you then go on to not win the league and you see the differences because he's not there, then not breaking the bank for Caicedo is a problem. Equally, if Partey does get injured or doesn't, and Jorginho plays well and you go on to win the league, and then you sign Caicedo in the summer for £65 million, then it's the right move. And I think right now it's that little bit of a, you're playing blackjack, you've got like 17, and you're asking to see another card, and it's are you going to get? Are you going to? Yeah. Are you going to get a 4 or are you going to get 5 or more? And I think it's almost that case of it's so close. And I do also feel as well for Arsenal fans, because there's been times this window where, there was a time for about 10 days where the words Mudryk and João Felix trended, where most of the mainstream media said you're leading the race on both, and you ended up with neither. And Caicedo wants to join. He overtook Chelsea, and then it hasn't happened. So I do understand the frustration. I do understand the frustration. It might feel a bit like I thought I was going to get a PlayStation 5 for Christmas, and I ended up getting a Game Boy. Maybe there's a little bit of that, but I still think you're going to win the league. So for me, I wouldn't write yourselves off just yet. But let's see what happens.
Just one more thing, Terry. This time last year in January, we didn't sign anyone. Despite getting, Aubameyang off the books and things, which, rightly so, it's proved in hindsight. But given that experience and that hindsight in mind, I know we've signed Tross, I know we signed that Polish lad. Perhaps he thinks that he could play in the CDM role, because I saw reports that he plays not just centre back but also CDM.
Yeah, the thing is, the difference between this year and last, I don't know much about this centre back you've signed. I think Trossard's a colossal signing. I think he's my signing of the window so far. Closely followed by Weghorst United. Mudrik's one that's in there as well. I just think, and I'm talking not about the individual player and their qualities. I think how much they're going to help a team in terms of their in-season targets. Long term, I think you've probably got to look at Mudryk to Chelsea as probably potentially the best signing because of the ceiling and the ability the player's got. But in the short term, I'd look at it that way. But you have done some good business. You've strengthened the squad. You've made it better. Lokonga's going to go out as well. The only fear I'd probably have is midfield-wise, you're not any deeper. You've got better quality now, but you're not any deeper because El Nenny's out and Lokonga's going. It's a case of the biggest thing I'd worry about is if you have two midfield injuries, because then there literally is no one to play in midfield. That would be more of a worry than any one individual. So Lokonga leaving is an interesting one. But Daniel, thank you for coming on, mate, and having your say. I appreciate it, bro.
Thanks, Terry.
Top man, thank you very much indeed. Super chats here. 18 million for Caicedo, who has done nothing. Jorginho, 12 million to help the title charge. Give me that any day. Arteta is a tactician and wanted him for years. It's smart, is what Anthony has got to say to us here today. And a lot of people think it's smart. A lot of people think it is smart business from him to bring him in. Does Charlie Portino need another year loan? Look, I've only seen Portino play in 2 games, and he did not look ready. I obviously haven't followed his progression out on loan. I just don't have the time to do that. So you guys tell me. But again, I don't know how good he is because I'm not an Arsenal fan. I don't watch him out on loan, so it's very hard for me to say. Really, it's very hard for me to say. Let's have a look at some more of your comments coming through here. Yes, I agree 100%. When Partey doesn't play, we get beat. That's the keep him fit. He's got to stay fit. Then Samuel here says Terry should United sell Anthony Martial, Anthony Elanga, Axel Tuanzebe? Yeah, most of those players you've mentioned there, probably the only one there I wouldn't sell that you've mentioned is AWB. I'm not too sure about selling right now. Depends who else we can bring in at right back, but I wouldn't sell AWB right now. He's been very good cover for Delo, so I wouldn't get rid of him at this moment in time. This super chat says, as an Arsenal fan, I'm disappointed that we don't sign anyone this window. Next window, we will have lots of competition that want to sign Caicedo too. That is, again, a very fair piece of analysis, in my opinion, and very, very true. I think there is definitely a reason. That is a reason to be frustrated. I get that. Please let me rant or I won't sleep tonight. Yeah, if you want to come and have a rant, my friend, come and have a rant. The link's in the comment section. Feel free to. Also, remember, 3 p.m., we are live with Lee Gunner today, talking transfers. And then this evening, we'll be doing a deadline day show of sorts. I don't quite know what it looks like yet, but we're doing some kind of show. I am working for Bleacher Report this afternoon as well today. So if you've got the Bleacher Report app, get it downloaded. 5 p.m., your boy's going to be there. So make sure you are tuning in. It's my first time ever working for another company. So I'm intrigued to see how I'm going to do. Never done it before. I'm going to have a little shape up the beard later. Have a nice little shave, I think. Make myself look smart and all that. I haven't even checked. People go, what's the latest transfer news? I haven't even looked at any transfer updates in a while now. What's come through new in the last little bit of time that's relevant to us here? No, that's none of that is relevant. None of that is relevant. Nothing new. Oh, here's a new one. Chelsea and Benfica are not close to reaching an agreement for Enzo Fernandez. And this time the transfer looks complicated despite the offer 120 million and in 6 payments. The English continue to try and unlock it. See, this comes from Cesar Mello. Cesar Mello's a weird one because he's the guy the other day that was like, it's hot and it looks great and it's moving on forward. Now it's not close, but it has to be close, doesn't it? They've offered 120 million. It's literally the structure that's holding it up. This is what I don't understand about terminology of deals. This is what I don't understand about the terminology of deals. It's only the structure that's holding it back. So it's the only element of the deal. One factor. So how is it not close? Like if there's 10 stages to a deal and 9 are complete, how is it not close? I don't understand. Maybe they think, well, because they're nowhere near agreeing on the structure, that 9 to 10 move. They're so far apart. Maybe they mean that. But that's just never how I interpret these things. Personally, I see that as the reason it is close. Like, I see advance as being advanced and close, same thing. If you've done personal terms, players ready to do the medical, the fees agreed, the structures agreed. It's just, I don't know. There's like bonus need to be agreed. And you say it's advanced. It ain't advanced. How's it not? I don't understand how that's not advanced. I never understand it. Brighton clearly didn't want to sell. Jorginho still better than nothing, is what 13 here says. Arsenal fans are deluded. We are first man. Trust Mikel Arteta. CL Mello is just waffling. It's a big deals take time, is what Dyke says here. Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't see how it's not close. Where last night it was reported as being hella close. I don't get it personally. I don't get it personally. But maybe that's just me. Right, we're going to pick to Ninus now, who's a gooner. A gooner? He's a gooner. He's coming on to have his say.
Hey, Terry, what's happening?
Yeah, I'm good, my friend. You don't sound very happy, though.
Not at all. Not at all. Obviously, we are serious about these players in a sense of Mudryk. Last hour, look how long it took Chelsea to make that deal happen. You know, we could have made that Caicedo deal happen. We put in 2 bids in quick succession, which means we're obviously serious about the player. I just don't understand why we try to skim that extra 10 mil every single time. We weren't expecting to be in this position we're at, which I totally understand. If we weren't in this position, I could also understand why we were going for someone like Jorginho. But being in this position now, this time of the year with half a season left to go, this is where you need to invest your money. This is where you need to bring in big players. You need to bring players with high caliber, players who are going to make a difference. And I just believe Jorginho is just going to be a fringe player. He's just there to provide cover. He's not there as a first team player. That's the problem.
I understand that. On the scrimping, I had Premzi and Igal on last night, and they kind of played down something that I said, especially Premzi. I feel like a lot of Arsenal fans have kind of celebrated and endorsed this not overspending culture at Arsenal for a long time. If you go back to the Wenger and Fergie days, the there's a very famous video of Mo when he was on aftv of yes, but let's talk about net spend. Let's talk about net spend. And there's always kind of been a celebration and a badge of honor with some Arsenal fans, not all of you, around. Yeah, we didn't win the league, or yeah, we only came fourth. Yeah, we didn't win a trophy, but we only spent 20 million net spend. You guys spent 100 million, so it's a good achievement. Even when you didn't get Mudryk, I saw so many big Arsenal accounts basically say, yeah, but we're never going to get hung over a barrel. We're never going to overpay. We're never going to keep bidding for players. We're never going to get into bidding wars. And my question is, but do you not want to land your number one targets so you not just win in the short term, that you also win in the longer term? Like, what's your take on that?
Well, if you didn't before, you better change your mind now after 20 years of nothing. So no Premier League, no Champions League. You need to. At the end of the day, we've seen what big teams do. Man City have done it. Chelsea have done it. Now Newcastle are doing it. We try to skim every single time. Look at the ridiculous joke over Luis Suarez when we were looking for that bid. We underestimated by what? Was it 1 million? So even that Luis Suarez deal was an absolute joke at the end of the day. we take the absolute piss every single time. And I can see why Lee Gunner gets frustrated, because I'm just as frustrated as he is. Most of these people that make these comments haven't been around since the time. You've got to be at the age, that you've seen Arsenal back in 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The frustration builds and it just consistently keeps going. And these are the types of deals that can make or break a season. Okay, let's say Jorginho does do well.
Yeah.
Good. But if he doesn't do well, wowee, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's one of those crazy things. Sorry, I've just got to send the link to someone as you're talking. I don't mean to be ignoring you. I just struggle with multitasking. I'm a typical man when it comes to multitasking. And I was meant to be on a call at 11 o'clock as well. And obviously, because of this news, it's overran. Listen, I totally agree. And this is where, I praise Arsenal a lot this year. I think you've improved. I think you've moved forward. But I've always had that question. And for me, it's a case of the only thing I would ever not want my club to do is spend money like Portsmouth did. Spend money like Rangers did. That's going to put us out of business. But as long as you're not at risk of going out of business, I never understand for me, that's the only thing I would say. If Caicedo ends up at a rival for 10 million more than you bid, I don't see the value in not getting in for the sake of 10 million pounds.
Exactly.
You mean you bid? It's been confirmed by the Shakhtar board. You bid the same amount as Shakhtar for Mudryk. You just weren't prepared to pay as much wages. Now, I understand that a little bit more because you start paying Mudryk more. Everybody in their contract renewals wants more money, and it eats into it. That makes a little bit more sense. But when it comes to the actual fee, there comes a point, and Arsenal fans have got to wake up and smell the coffee. You're the best team in England right now. If you maintain this level, everyone asks for more money. Why? KPMG are the leading specialists in they create the formula that clubs use for evaluating players. And if people have got to read this stuff to understand it, and if you understand and educate yourself, this all makes sense. But one of the biggest key factors in the valuation of a player is what they call sporting potential, which means the player you're buying, what impact do you think he's going to have on helping you win the league? So when you knock on the door of Port Brighton now for Caicedo, you're not a team in 8th trying to get back into the Champions League.
Precisely.
You're a team that's basically, we know this because it's publicly stated, you need Caicedo to win the league because if Partey gets injured, you feel like you're done. Therefore, the sporting potential is massive. The income potential from that is gargantuan. Therefore, we're going to add a premium. For years, Man United fans called it Man United tax. It isn't Man United tax. It isn't Liverpool tax. It isn't Arsenal tax. It's quite simply the formula that dictates the valuation of players. People should just research player valuation KPMG. They release a book every year. It's literally like 300 pages long that details so much about the transfer market. And essentially, the football clubs at a commercial level consult with KPMG and other members of what they call the big 4 accountancy and consultancy firms to dictate the formulas that tell us why players are valued where they are. It's like when you get a player like Wayne Rooney on 300 grand a week, and United fans used to go, but he's not as good as Messi, who's earning the same amount as him. Yeah, but it's about his commercial value to Man United, and he's being paid 70% of his wages is based on how commercially popular he was, as opposed to his footballing ability in his late 20s. But the fact that football fans, and more so the media, don't educate football fans on this, it's staggering to me. So the better Arsenal get, the more you're going to get charged for players. It's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Look at Caicedo's statistics. He's, almost leading the race just behind Partey in tackles in the league. He's also leading through balls through the middle in the league. Now, you're bringing someone in like Caicedo, not just to say if Partey gets injured. The guy's happy to sit on bench. However, you're bringing him in as somebody who's going to be the successor of Thomas Partey once he's out. What's Jorginho going to do? It's just filling in the void in the interim. If that was the case, just go get Tielemans, who probably would have cost the same amount. Bring him in.
Mate, I could not agree with you more on that. Listen, my bro, I know you wanted to rant so you could sleep.
Now I could sleep.
I assume you're in Australia. Late. It must be late.
Yeah.
Lovely,
yeah,
mate.
It's about 10:30.
We'll chat to you again soon, my friend. Thanks for coming on and having your say. Appreciate it, bro. Jessica Black joining us in a second. This here says, clip these greedy Arsenal fans, go support Chelsea. I don't think it's greedy. I don't think it's greedy to want more from your club. Remember, Stan Kroenke is as wealthy as the whole entire Todd Bowley group put together. So there is no reason. This is what I keep saying to all fans that are owned by billionaires. We can all spend like City. We can all spend like Chelsea. Owners can only pump £100 million every 3 years into the club. The rest of it is commercial income, which they utilize. Listen, Walmart could sponsor Arsenal tomorrow for a world record-breaking sponsorship shirt fee. They could. Remember, the Kroenke family owe Walmart. Do you know how much money Walmart is worth? Walmart could sponsor your club £150 million a year to be a shirt sponsor. You could. The Emirates Stadium goes. It's the Walmart Stadium. Not the nicest color or name, but they could pump money into your club through multiple mechanisms if they wanted to. That isn't a dig at the Kroenkes. No one with multi-billionaire owners is unadvantaged compared to others. It's whether the owners have a willingness to invest. It doesn't matter if you've got 500 billion or 5 billion. When it comes to investment into your football club, it's the same thing now. It's the same thing now. It's the same thing. Plus, people that are worth like 100 billion, they don't have £100 billion cash, right? A lot of that is based on what like for instance, a lot of the Middle East guys, based on like what oil's worth. Legitimately, it's not actual cash. Like Bezos. That the money that he doesn't have that money in the bank. Most of that is put upon how valuable Amazon is. He doesn't actually have like £200 billion in the bank. Doesn't actually exist like that. But there we go. Jessica Black is joining us on the show. I know you agree. Look, there's no reason not to agree. It's facts. It is a fact. If the Kroenkes could spend like Chelsea, Man United could spend like Chelsea. Harder for us. We've got to pay the debts off. It's just whether you want to or not. It's simple as that. Simple as that. Ibrahima Konate is out for 3 weeks. Liverpool might improve then. Konate is out. Jess is here with me now. What are you saying, Jessica?
Hey.
Hey, yeah, we're live.
I was like, wait, what?
How are you feeling about Jorginho, J5, future Ballon d'Or, nearly a Ballon d'Or joining Arsenal?
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously like, I don't know. Like, I have so many different feelings just because obviously, like, when we sign players, I don't think we've had a resounding, this is a great player that we should sign from an Arsenal perspective, like Arsenal fan perspective, ever. I think, like, in recent times, most players have been met with vitriol and it's not the right player, we shouldn't get him, blah, blah. So I'm kind of used to us getting a player and people being super upset about it anyway. My feelings on Jorginho is I think he is a really good player. I think he has good experience. He can help us until the end of the season. We asked for a midfielder. We asked for attacking depth, and we got that. And so if you compartmentalize that, bringing in 3 players in January when you're pushing for the title, 2 of whom that have Premier League experience and are quality players, I don't think you can be really upset about that. And for the fees that we got them for, it keeps your powder dry for the summer. So that is fine for me. What I don't like is just like if you bring in all the context around the window, how it started off with Mudryk, we were supposed to get him. We were leading the race all the way, and then Chelsea came in the 11th hour and got him. And then El Neni got injured, and that's the only reason why they started to look at a midfielder. We chased Caicedo, a player that's not for sale. Didn't get him, and then ended up with Jorginho. When you add the context in it, what I start to question is not whether or not we've improved the squad. We have improved the floor of the squad. We have brought in players that can help us push for the title. My question is more, why can't we get big deals over the line? Our number 1 targets. That's 2 number 1 targets not secured in one window when we allegedly had the money and we weren't able to do it. And so, I've been speaking to different Arsenal fans, and, people automatically get defensive, and it's like, you can't blame Edu. You can't blame anybody. We're 5 points clear in January. Well, 5 points clear in January is not a trophy. So I don't know why we're waving that around like it's something. It's great and it's progress, but it's really nothing in the grand scheme if we don't win the league, right? And I still think that within, you can look at something and say, I like the deals that he's done here, but this is where he falls short. And we know with Edu, selling players has been a struggle. And it also looks like getting big, complex deals over the line is also a struggle. And so my concern is when we get to the summer and we want to go in for Declan Rice and there's more competition. You know, Chelsea will probably still want a midfielder. Manchester City looks like they probably will need a midfielder as well. Will be able to get that over the line, or are we going to end up with our third, fourth choice again? And so that's where where I struggle to understand why we can't have genuine discourse around the club, and why it's always like, no, you can't say anything, it's fine, we're 5 points clear, when there's clearly some issues there in regards to like negotiations. Now, if you say it's not Edu and he's working with a certain, amount of money, then we should be talking about the Cronkies. And, the blame has to be somewhere. Like, it can't just be, well, this is just how it goes. And I think, we've spoken about this so many times, that if the Cronkies are unwilling to give the manager that they said they're backing the amount of money to get his number one targets, we should back Mikel Arteta and be asking the Cronkies to do more, or ask them to go, because we haven't won anything. Yes, they're adding great players and we're improving, but until we're winning, I still think we should stay skeptical, and I think this window is a good example of it. We went after 2 number one targets and secured none. And if it's not on Edu, then it's on the Cronkies. Like,
yeah, I don't disagree, and I think that you have to be able to challenge your football club. You have to. That's how you keep them honest. That's how you keep things right. The problem is, and I know me and you have of course had this conversation behind closed doors a number of times. This comes down to Arsenal fans creating their own reality around your club. So Odegaard isn't a Mikel Arteta kind of player. I watched the stream where someone said that on your show as an example, and they gave a long list of, I hate the word, but data points and all these reasons as to why. And then when he turned out to be a brilliant player for Arsenal, it's because he developed and twisted Odegaard into doing the exact things that I said we needed. So it wasn't that I wasn't wrong about Odegaard not being the right player. Arteta essentially listened to me and turned him into the player that I said we needed. You get Arsenal fans that say, the club are doing a brilliant job now, we will spend the money. But they give themselves a get out of jail free card, which is, but we'll never overspend. We'll never get into a bidding war. We'll never overspend. We'll never give out big contracts. Therefore, then when you miss out on these deals, the people that say our owners are going to back us, they go, yeah, but only back us to a point, and we don't want to overpay for people because that will create disharmony and problems. There's always a get out clause. There's always a way of getting out. There's always a political answer to everything people say. That isn't how fans, in my opinion, should operate. It should be, well, if you're backing us, back us. If you're only willing to spend up to a certain amount, tell us that ahead of time. But there is still going to be frustration within that. People can still challenge it. Whether you believe it's right or wrong, there should still be challenged. My issue is that people are always making excuses. Now, I don't think J5 is a bad signing. I've praised a lot of Arsenal signings before Gunners have in the last 18 months, 2 years. But what gets up my nose is people that pretend like everything is kind of preordained and meant to be this way. And that's fine. Some things work out. But sometimes you've got to put your hands up and go, I'm disappointed that we didn't go the extra mile to get the players that the manager wanted, especially when people say Arteta's talent ID is so high. Now, Arteta worked out brilliantly, but he wanted Buendia before him. Maybe Buendia under Arteta would have been even better. I'm not saying he would. We will never know now because it didn't happen. But I don't know. There is part of me that's just, what do people actually think and feel? There's a lot of egg on people's faces today. I said it earlier on the show, who stated that we would never sign an old player to bolster our midfield ranks. We'd never do it. And now they've done it. It's like they're working on what they'll say is, yeah, but we've only done it on a 1.5-year deal, not a 4-year deal like you did. And it was 12 million, not 50 million. So it isn't the same thing at all. But the age of the player is very, very similar. And sometimes you need to go for experience. And I know why he's done this. I don't think there is anybody after Caicedo that fits that profile that's available for a good price. So it's a case of let's bring a body in. My only question for you around it, though, Jay, is with Lokonga now going out as well and El Neni being injured, are you not worried that you face a similar issue that you basically only have 3 central midfielders with any experience? Unless I'm forgetting somebody. Because if Lokonga goes out and El Neni's injured, you have Xhaka, Jorginho and Partey. Is there anybody else that would come in if there was another injury? Who would you guys use?
I don't know why people. I feel like we get into this like, what if everybody gets injured? Everybody's not going to get injured at once. It just doesn't happen. We have most people have one backup to their DM, not 3, not 4. You know, I can't really name any club, not know a top club that has 3 or 4 DMs on their books. So we have 2, Thomas Partey and Jorginho. We only play 1 DM. Xhaka is an 8. And so we have Vieira that plays there. We have Odegaard that plays there. ESR can play there. And so I think we're fine. I think people are finding and manufacturing reasons to be worried. Nobody wants Sambi playing. So, you know, like, I don't know what, like, I want him out on loan, learning how to play, you know. So for me, he was never going to play in the 8 position because that's just not what he would play for Arsenal. And we have 4 or 5 8s at the moment, you know, and then you have 2 DMs, and most teams have 2 DMs, and that's it. If both of those get injured, you're just massively unlucky.
Yeah, okay, and that's fair enough. I mean, for me, I just look at it from a, you know, right now with Man United, we've got Christian Eriksen out injured. We've only got 4 midfield. I'm not saying DM, just saying we've only got 4 midfielders left, and it worries me. Our midfield doesn't have the quality that yours does. I was just wondering, like, your kind of take on that based on what I've seen, sort of people coming out and saying and stuff like that. The super chat here that says, "I'm still fuming. We leave things way too late," is what Ninos says here. We have this super chat that's come in that says, "I got $20 for Enzo. Let's contribute." I know you guys want him. Let's see what happens there, my friend. For F's sake, I can't catch a break. Our best defender after Virgil van Dijk this season is out. I hope not Phillips stays because Reece Williams is garbage. It's only 3 weeks, though. It's only 3 weeks. And I mean, Liverpool season's over anyway. So I know that sounds harsh, but you're not making top 4. You're out of the cups. You ain't winning the Champions League. I don't know what else to say. Like, the maximum you're going to get is sort of 6th. So it is what it is, really, I would say. And I don't mean that as disrespectful. I just mean you're not in a race for anything, bro. So there we go. Jess, though, I do. So someone said Ornstein's tweet. I love it when someone just comments says Ornstein's tweet. I'll go to it and see. And sometimes I go to it and he's tweeted 3 in the last 2 minutes. I'm like, which one was talking about? So Jorginho's transfer from Chelsea to Arsenal has gone down very well amongst the Arsenal squad and staff. Feeling is Arsenal midfielder brings technical ability, technical understanding, experience level, ideal for the title bid.
Can I say this? Oh, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I just want to say one thing before you, like, get rid of me. So, like, the one thing I will say about this, and we spoke about this, is there are positives to bringing in Jorginho if it's not a Chelsea player and he's not, you know, whatever. People were saying we had no experience in the squad, and that was the main reason. Well, first they said it was because we have no depth. Now we've added depth. They also said we don't have players that have been there and done it and won things before. Now we have a player that has been in winning sides. And so I do imagine that this has went down well. And the one thing that's different about Jorginho coming in now to David Luiz, Willian, and Czech and them coming in then was they're not coming into a terrible culture fighting for 8th Arsenal team. They're coming into a team that's focused on winning the league. And so he's not just going to come in and get with Aubameyang and Lacazette and mess around. So there are positives. I don't like the deal. Well, I don't like that we can't get our number 1 targets over the line. But if this is what we had just originally got, Jorginho, Trossard, and Kivior, I'd be like, all right, cool. We're going for the title. So
I hear you on that. Like I said, I don't think it's that. And I think that the problem with this deal is there's multiple layers here to talk about. I think the signing's a good signing. I also understand people angry you don't land your number 1 targets. I also understand the frustration of not overspending, and there's a challenge to be had around that. It isn't a case of if you're happy with the signing, you don't have to necessarily agree with not overpaying. You can be like, I like the Jorginho signing, but I still rather we spent £90 million on Caicedo. Those two things can exist simultaneously at the same time. I call it having a brain. I know a lot of people are polarized, so it's like, I don't like the Jorginho. I like the Jorginho deal, so I can't criticize anything the club's doing. That doesn't make sense to me, because when Man United were winning trebles, I criticize things. So you can always criticize, but that's just me. Listen, everyone who's tuned in, I want to say a big thank you to all of you. I was only meant to go live for 45 minutes. It's been an hour and a half. Live at 3 o'clock with Lee Gunner, talking about this deal and obviously the big Chelsea updates and much, much more. So make sure you're all back at 3 o'clock for us. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll see you all again very, very soon.